now, yes, they are writing this thing down, the area they're not pleased with, why they're not pleased with it. Maybe I'll go back to the same two people for contrast. Madame, can I come back to you? What's an area of your life you're not thrilled with, you're not totally pleased with right now?
My finances.
Your finances, okay. And tell me, why aren't you pleased with that area of your life right now?
Because I feel at this stage of my life, I should be further along with the money that I have, the investments I should have. I feel like I'm not farther enough along.
As you, quote, should be.
As I should be.
Yes.
Yes.
And, should's an interesting word. Most people, when they're not making progress, they should all over themselves. They list a bunch of shoulds, a bunch of rules of how this thing should be, and they beat themselves up. So what I'm hearing you say, if I'm hearing you correctly, is the should is coming from your blueprint, your idea of how it should be. And you say, I'm not where I should be. That's compared to what? Compared to 2/3 of the planet that's living on less than $2 a day? Probably not. But compared to your blueprint of where you think you should be, I'm not saying you're right or wrong. I'm just saying this is the formula for unhappiness in this area right now. So is it true you think you should be much further than you are financially at this stage? Is that an accurate description?
Yes.
So your life conditions don't match your core expectations, don't match your blueprint. So you experience something called unhappiness or dissatisfaction, or pain would be the most simple word we can use. Now that pain can make you crazy, or it can be used to make you hungry to find the answers and change. So as you're listening right now, I'm hoping you're relating this to yourself. Let me stall, give you a little time, and give you one more example. Sir, what's an area, I know you're thrilled with your work. That's the area you're happy with. What's the area you're not as thrilled with, you're not as pleased with in your life right now?
I would say my health.
And why are you not as pleased with your health?
I'm a little overweight. I don't have the body image that I'd want. I know that I'm not anywhere near where I should be with just general overall health type of thing.
Okay. And that's body shape, that's muscle, that's energy. What would you say?
It's all of the above.
Okay, all of the above. Okay. Well, you seem to be hard on yourself, but what's nice is you have a very high standard. Nothing wrong with that. But the point is, again, you're not satisfied, you're not happy, you're not pleased because your current life conditions in the area called your body don't match your shoulds, your core expectation of how it should be. Make sense?
Yes.
So now the question is, what do we do with this? Well, first of all, if you're not happy with some area of your life, good, right? Good. This is how we're going to make the shift in your life. This is what this whole program's about. Being honest with yourself that there's some place in your life, there's a gap between where you are and where you really want to be. And so we're going to help you close that gap. And the first step is to get honest with yourself, to tell yourself the truth, not make it worse than it is, but say, here's how it really is. That's how we start to improve. Then what we're going to do is get clear about what you really want, get a vision. And then we're going to work on the strategies to close that gap and make what you're visioning real. That's the process we're going to go through. Now, by the way, if you're not happy with an area of your life, we could call that unhappiness, we could call that dissatisfaction, or at a simple level, we call it some level of pain. Whenever we feel dissatisfied, unhappy, or a sense of pain, we really have three choices. And I don't just mean the choice of what to focus on, that's true, and what things mean and do, but let me kind of reframe it for you in a different way. The first choice people have when things aren't the way they want is to blame someone. Why are my finances not where I want them to be? Why is my body not where I want it to be? Why is my relationship not where I want it to be? And the most natural, and I say natural, I should say habitual, what the most people do when they're in this place of stress and they're overwhelmed is they look for something to blame. And there are three things you can blame. A, an event. The best thing about blaming an event, this thing that happened, I had this car accident years ago and I lost my momentum and I haven't worked on my body since. Or, man, I did have some money saved, but then, I had to take care of my mom, or, I put it in the stock market and you remember when it went up and it went down, or I bought some real estate and that was the right answer. And oh my gosh, look what happened. And you got a story. And the story may be absolutely accurate. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying blame will never empower you because it gives you no power. It reinforces this idea that the outside world controls you. And the outside world has massive influence. But again, there's two worlds we can master, the inner world and the outer world. But if you're going to master the outside world, we got to master the inside first. So blaming an event is convenient because an event's not going to interrupt you and say, excuse me, nope, I'm not the source. It's not going to happen. So you get to preserve your sense of identity. What's another thing you could blame besides some event? Ideally one from the past where no one is here to represent it. You can blame someone else. How could I possibly have a great relationship being with him? being with her, he or she's impossible. Look at them, they're so selfish. All they do is think about themselves. I hear this all the time in people in their relationships. And you know what? Their partner may be selfish, may be totally true and accurate as a story. But as long as you give that the reason why your life is not where you want it to be, very little is going to change except maybe you leaving that relationship. And then pretty soon you'll end up with the same problems with somebody else, most likely. Not always. Some people are made to be together, some not. I'm not denying that. I've certainly experienced that in my own life. But you got to start with not blaming someone else if you're going to get where you want to go. And we all do it. I've done it plenty of times. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm suggesting to you is if you're going to empower yourself, blame is still not the answer because it'll disempower you. And what's the third source you can blame? By the way, blaming someone who's not here is best of all because they won't interrupt you and say, no, it's your fault. So it's very convenient and give you a nice comfort in the moment that there's nothing wrong with me. It's just this other person, whether it be your boss or, your partner or whoever it may be, your children. But the third choice you got is to blame yourself. And most people think of this as being responsible. And I'm here to tell you, having worked with 3.5 million people, blaming yourself will not make it better. And I don't mean don't be responsible. When you're blaming yourself, you're not being responsible. You're beating yourself up. When you're responsible, you're saying, oh my gosh, here's a pattern that I've got to change. This isn't me. This is a pattern that I've been running. I got to shift this pattern to focus or meaning or action. I got to shift what goes on in this area, and I can make a change in this life. But as long as you're beating yourself up, you're blaming yourself, woe is me, or I'm no good, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not strong enough, you're not going to see a change. Does that make sense? Blame is something we all do at times, but the quicker you can get out of it, the faster you'll be empowered. So I look at blame as one of 3 choices, but it's a choice that really doesn't give you anything. What's the second choice? A real choice. Well, if you don't like how your business is, if you don't like your finances, if you don't like your body, if you don't like your relationship, change it. That's what you got to do. Change it. Change your life conditions. You'll never do that as long as you're blaming someone else. What do you got to do? Put on your shoes and start walking. Take some action. Find a role model of someone who's already done it. Get focused not just on I need to lose weight or I need to get stronger, healthier, or I need to make more money. Get focused on what you want and be specific. Hey, I want this kind of energy. I want to be able to run like the wind. I want the energy when I come home and say, honey, I'm home. She feels it or he feels it. It creates a state change in my partnership, Or, I want, this kind of physical strength. I want to be shaped like this. And you be real specific. I want to lose 23 pounds. Not, I want to lose some weight. Because you may be focused, but you're not being clear. Now, there is a third choice. Sometimes you can't change your life conditions. What, Tony Robbins, you're telling me I can't change my life? I'm saying some things are outside your control. Let's be honest. Right? You can't control someone else's health. You can influence it. You can't control the weather. You can't control what's happening in the economy. You can control what you do with it. You can influence, but you can't control it. Sometimes you can't control what's happening with your own body. I mean, every one of us is going to age, and certain things eventually change, right? It's just how it works. So if you put yourself in a position where life has to be a certain way based on your blueprint for you to be happy, and life not only isn't that way, but can't be that way, then you're going to be unhappy and miserable forever. See, if in order for you to be happy, your parents have to be alive, and in my case, that was a belief I once had, and I was into challenging traditional therapists as opposed to training them. I was a young kid, and I was just cared about people. I want to show what was possible, and I thought challenging was the way to prove myself, and it was a good way of doing things, but it wasn't very elegant. I've hopefully changed some of my style since that time. My point is, though, I would challenge therapists and say, give me your worst patient. I do this on a radio show. Give me somebody you've never been able to cure. I'll handle them in an hour. A great way to create a claim. And they'd fight with me or argue with me, and I'd say, great, bring your patient. I'm doing this free guest event, and I'll demonstrate it. And so for years, I built my reputation initially by turning people around in one session. Or I'd say, listen, I'll give you a coaching session, one session, and I promise a result, but you pay nothing. And it'd be something they'd worked on for years and years and years. But I got into the changes of their blueprint and their body, their states and their blueprint, and the change happens. I got to change what controls them moment to moment and the blueprint. So for example, a woman I was told about, she had a lot of great friends, and this woman wants to remain private, but I'll just say this very famous woman, if I mention her name, you know who she was, and I'll give you this frame about her life. Incredibly successful at multiple levels of success. Probably the most important area, relationships, enormous, incredible number of friends who truly love her. In fact, that's how I found out about her. People that were concerned for her, that truly loved her. You could see the authentic caring for her. Secondly, incredibly successful in her career, very famous as a result. Third, very successful financially, wealthy by just about anybody's terms. Fourthly, what else I'd say? A very physically strong person. Someone's taking care of her body, and a very attractive woman. So all these areas of life are abundant. She would be considered to be, a successful, wealthy, abundant human being at just about anybody's standards, except one: happiness. She's completely, totally, clinically depressed and has been through therapy for years, hides it publicly, but personally is devastated, has been at the edge, whether she wanted to live or die many times. And so now what's she done? She's been medicated for years, and now the problem is she's maxed her medications. And at this point I said, bring her, I'll handle it in one session. That sounds very flippant, but I did it to just jolt the person's attention. And this person knew the kinds of things I did and said, well, I'd love to believe that. I said, bring her, and I promise you in a session or two, we'll get her there. The problem, she's depressed for a reason. It's a habit in her body, physiologically, biochemically. But I said, more importantly, she has a blueprint. If she's depressed all the time, not just moment to moment, she's got a blueprint. And I said, yeah, but she's on Prozac, and if I remember right, it was a Flexer and Zoloft, all three maxed out. I said, you're changing your biochemistry, but if you change the controlling force of your blueprint, it's not going to change. You're still going to get depressed. So long story short, I eventually get to sit with this woman, visit with her. She spends the first 20 or 30 minutes trying to explain to me that she's apologetic, that she's depressed when she knows she should be happy. She should be happy. The problem is she's not. So I dig and dig and dig, and guess what I discovered? Your blueprint is kind of your map for how life is supposed to be. So I finally find out, what is life about? How is it supposed to be? And she finally confesses that her whole life, even though she knows it's not right, she's always believed that she should be married with a great man, and they should have 3 children, that even if he passes, these children will love her forever and she will love them. Well, nothing wrong with that belief system except this. You say, well, Tony, just tell her to change her life conditions. Go build a relationship. Go have some children. Sounds really good, except this woman at that stage was in her very late 50s. So barring a medical miracle, we're not going to see a life condition change here. In other words, she can't physically have children. So I immediately said, well, what about adopting? What about... No, that's not her blueprint. It has to be her own blood children. Adopted kids sometimes look for their parents. Sometimes they leave you. And underneath it, I began to look for, if you're going to change your blueprint, there's a need you're trying to meet. And we'll go into this in more depth later. I just want to kind of trigger you to understand how powerful the blueprint is, and that sometimes you got to change it, not just change your life, in order to be successful, fulfilled, happy, have meaning. But what you got to do is find out, why is that blueprint that way? What's the need she's after? And again, we'll go into depth on this later in another day. But here's what I want you to get. What she wanted was 2 human needs: love and certainty. The certainty that love would never go away. And the problem is, her blueprint was a man will leave you. She'd been married twice and divorced. So she knew that would happen. But your children will always love you and never leave you. Clearly, she never had a 16-year-old. I've got 4 kids, and if you've had children, there may be a stage with some of those children where they don't love you unconditionally every moment and never leave you. They do the opposite. Where's the keys, baby? So there's 3 choices. Blame. Blame an event in your life. Blame an event outside your control. Blame a person. Blame yourself. It never works. 2 real choices: change your life conditions. We're going to show you how to do that step by step here. Or change your blueprint. Now, let me give an example that would illustrate not only the power to get people to tap their resources at a different level, but really the power of state and shifting blueprint. And the example I want to give you is related from sports, but you could relate this to your own life. You could relate this to if you're in a position of leadership. Listen, if you're a business person, you've got to get people to maximize their ability, don't you? You got to get them when they're in a down state and turn them around, and not just for the moment. You got to get them to sustain their success. Change that focus. Change what this challenge means. Change what they're doing so they get the victory in life. Got to do the same things for your kids, don't you? What is a good parent? It's a good leader. You got to help your kids find a different focus when it's not working out, when they feel like, it's all coming apart or they're not enough. You got to be able to do the same thing. Get them to come up with a better meaning, take action. Sometimes you got to do this to yourself. And if you're going to lead, you got to start by leading yourself, not other people. So let me give you a good example. You may have seen my silly infomercials over the years, and you may have noticed that Coach Pat Riley, one of the greatest coaches in NBA history, is in those shows and often gives testimony to the impact of my work. And Pat's a dear friend of mine. I met him in the early 1990s, but he actually started reading my books and listening to my tapes back in the 80s. In fact, he's given me enormous credit for the impact he had back in the days when he was with 4 championship teams, the Los Angeles Lakers. I could share so many stories about Pat because he's such an extraordinary human being. But you may recall that Pat had joined the Miami Heat. When he took the team over, it was a team that had never won a national championship, and they were really broken. And he loved the idea of this challenge. Well, by 2006, Pat was 61 years old, and he had not won a national championship in 17 years. What a gift. At that stage of your life, to be back in the competition, to be the best in the world, the best of anyone who exists in the NBA. But here he finds himself having an opportunity to fight in one of those championships. And by the second game of the series, he'd already lost 2 games. His men were feeling defeated. Listen, there's only been 2 teams prior to Pat Riley that have ever come back having lost the first 2 games and won the NBA championship. 2 in history. So everyone, of course, in the press is talking about this. In the interviews, they're talking about this after the game. And you could just take one look at the states of these men, these players, and you'd say, oh my God, they just lost 2 in Dallas. They're going back to Miami. There's no way they're going to turn this around. So what did Pat do? He recognized the truth. What he had to do is make some changes in his own state. He had to be able to find a sense of absolute certainty within himself before he could transfer it to the people he wanted to touch. And by the way, it's the same thing that all of us have to do. If you're going to lead, you can't give something you haven't done to yourself. You can't take somebody to a place that you're not yet in. How he did that, we'll talk about on tomorrow's audio. But once he had that state of certainty, and he was tapping into a blueprint that says there's always a way. There's always a way to victory. Even though you're down by 0-2, even though only 2 teams in history have done it, there is a way. He then began to work on a plan. And here was his plan. The day after that second loss, when the team spirit was about as low as it could possibly be, he didn't go in to motivate these men. He wanted to inspire them. And by the way, you'll hear me say this a lot of times. I don't believe in motivation. Motivation's like a warm bath, but we all need inspiration. And what's the difference? Someone trying to get you going versus someone triggering something that already exists inside you. Inside all of us, there's the ability to overcome. He had to find a way to raise their spirits so in that state of mind, they could find their real abilities, their real resources. So he tells them the day after the game, when their spirits are as low as they can imagine, he said, look, guys, we're going to be playing for the national championship 12 days from today on June 20th in Dallas in Game 6. Now, guys looked at him like, come on. We just lost 2 in a row. Only 2 teams ever come back from in history. Some talked about it later. Some were thinking in their minds at the time, as Pat shared this story with me later. He said, you could just look in their eyes and see total disbelief. He said, now, I know what you're thinking. Many of you looking at me like, oh, this is some kind of pump up. There's no way in hell. Only 2 teams in history have ever come back from losing the first 2 games to win, and we aren't playing well. We seem to be outmatched by these guys. There's no way we're going to go and win 3 games in a row here in Miami and then go back to Dallas and beat them. We haven't won a game in Dallas for 4 years. At that stage, the Heat had not won 1 game in Dallas, hear me, in 4 years, much less in the championship after they'd been behind. And he just looked them in the eye and he said, feel me and feel yourselves. He said, there is no doubt, there is 0 doubt in my mind that all the hardships, all the work, all that we put in this entire season is going to come to fruition. And that night, when we finally have the chance to taste victory, all the deprivation, all that we've endured is going to take us to the point where we will take that victory. Well, if you remember history, you know what occurred. They came back and they won in Miami the next game and the next 3 games in a row. Now they're flying back to Dallas to play the Mavericks on their home court, where they have an incredible record and where Miami has the worst record against them for 4 years. But before he left, he called another team meeting the morning before they're supposed to fly to Dallas. And he said, remember what I said to you after you lost the second game? We've won 3 in a row. No one in the world thought we were going to do this. We're 1 victory away. And many of you are thinking we got 2 games to do it in. And he said, and you're wrong. We're going to do it in 1 game. It's real simple, gentlemen. We're going to walk into this place with a level of certainty where we own that victory right now before we even get on the plane, and we're going to carry it through the game no matter what hardships we face, and we are going to walk out victorious and champions. And he said the way we're going to do it is real simple. Pack only 1 set of clothes for Game 6 because there isn't going to be a Game 7. He said, I'm not booking any hotels. We're booking one hotel night, one evening. And as you can guess, there are not going to be any other hotels in Dallas with that game going on. Everybody's flying in to see it. We're booking one night. We're bringing one suit to wear because I want to tell you something. We're going to come back that night to Miami for our victory celebration. There's no doubt in my mind, just like there was no doubt in my mind when I talked to you after the second game. We're going to come back having won that game. So sure enough, to a man, they packed only one outfit. They booked only one evening, and they flew into the Lions Den into Dallas to go play the sixth game. And if you read the press, if you talk to your friends, if you're an NBA fan, I'm sure you can remember very few people thought that they could possibly win a fourth game in a row and take the championship in Game 6 in Dallas's hometown. But Pat knew there was one more thing to be done. He needed to make sure the players were in state from an emotional gut level, inspired right before the game. I had the chance to fly to Dallas, and I was so excited to see what they could do. And, Pat let me know they were going to absolutely win before the game, and I was going to have a chance to witness it. But here's what he said to the team. He walked in, and it was silent. Everyone looked in each other's eyes, paused, waiting to hear what Pat would say before the most important game of their life. He looked around and said, gentlemen, does April 4th, 1968 mean anything to you? And of the 15 players, 14 were African-American at the time, so some of the older players looked at him kind of knowingly and nodded their heads, but some of the younger players looked at him with kind of a blank expression on their face. And Pat said, that was the day that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. The day before that assassination, he was speaking to a striking Memphis sanitation workers. Now, I'm not trying to trivialize the work of one of the greatest American leaders we've ever had by trying to compare him with what we're trying to accomplish here in some sporting contest. He said, but I want you to understand there are some parallels. He said, for what Dr. King said is this. And let me just read you what he read, the famous words of Dr. King. I know I won't do them justice with my voice, but think about sitting in that room right before the game where everything's on the line, and you're hearing these words. Oh, like anybody, I'd like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned with that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go to the mountain, and I have looked over, and I have seen the promised land. We have suffered greatly. We've been through so many deprivations, but I have seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will go to the promised land. And I am happy tonight. I am not worried about anything. I am not fearing any man. My eyes have seen the glory, and it is ours. And with that, Pat turned, walked out of the locker room, and led his men onto the floor into battle. And the game began. And a group of men walked on that court that were very different than just 9 days before when they'd lost that second game. A group of men that had found the resources inside of themselves to triumph. They didn't play perfectly. There were all kinds of ups and downs in the end. But in the final seconds when that buzzer went and these men were facing the greatest challenge of their life, they won by 3 points. And they walked off champions for the first time in their lives. And for Pat Riley, a true leader, an amazing coach, for the 5th time as a leader. And I tell you this story because it inspires me. I mean, here's a man I'm trying to coach. He teaches me all the time. Isn't that true of all of our lives? All he did was find a way at different stages to get these men to enter a state of their true ability, to give up the blueprint of failure and to step into the blueprint that there is always a way. How useful is that blueprint for all of us? How useful could it be in your life? No matter how successful we are going to face challenges in our life, and it's going to be our capacity to find the state within us, to find those beliefs within us that'll inspire us. And in the coming days, we're going to come at it from many different ways, from humor, from real strategies that are proven, and we're going to just do a little bit each day until you get the momentum that takes you, if you're already successful, through the championship and beyond, the consistency of being your best all the time. Or if you're facing a challenging time where you feel like you're 0-2, it's going to be the victory that brings you those 4 victories in a row and that redefines your own identity of who you are and how you show up. That's the promise of the ultimate edge. What is the ultimate edge in life? Emotional fitness, psychological strength, the mental edge, the focus, the strategies and tools, and the alignment within yourself. That's what we're going to focus on each day. Not just inspiration, but strategy as we work together to make sure we maximize who you are, what you're capable of, and what you get to enjoy out of this life. And that's where I want to kind of end here in terms of our final exercise. What I want you to think about as you leave, and what we're going to do each day so you know, is you'll listen to a session like this. Hopefully it'll stimulate you. It'll get you asking questions. It'll give you some tools, some strategies. But the proof is in the pudding. That's where the rubber meets the road, to use two overused metaphors. But it's true. The rubber meets the road with action. So at the end of each session, I'm going to ask you to do something. It might take you 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes so you get momentum. On some days, it'll be a strategy I want you to implement. Maybe something on your finances. It might be around your body. On other days, it's going to be something that makes you shift psychologically in your state or in your blueprint. Today, since this is the introduction, I know this has been a tall drink of water, but I hope it's been stimulating for you, and we're going to go into the mechanics tomorrow. But what I really want to do today is first have you just look at, for 2, 3, 4 minutes, stop, stretch your body out, and I want you to write a paragraph or two to answer this question. What would your life be like if it was exactly the way you want it to be today? In other words, I want you to start with the ultimate end in mind. We all know we need to think about what we want, not what we don't want. We have to focus our minds. But I want to make it rich. It doesn't have to be perfect. The words don't have to be magical or something. I want you to describe for yourself. Like, if life was the way I ultimately want it to be, if my life was extraordinary, life on my terms, what would that look like? What would I change? What would I enhance? What would I spend more time with? What would I appreciate more? What would I do? And I want you to take a little time to jot that down and kind of get a paragraph or two that you can read that you go, yeah, that's the essence. Because that is what we're going for. Yes, we'll make the individual changes around, finances or body or money or whatever it is, relationships, etc. But what we want to get clear is what's the ultimate you're after. And we're going to make sure we keep moving you towards that. And if you're wondering, how are we going to do that in a week or two? We're going to do it by a little action each day. Input, information, education, some tools, some inspiration, but most importantly, something you're going to do. And each day we'll build on the day before, and pretty soon you'll get this momentum. We all know, the hardest part of working out is getting to the gym, right? And once you get started, you get in the flow. The same thing is true here. So my only request to you is show up. I'll be here with plenty of energy, ready to rock and roll with you. I can promise you that. I'm here to serve you. But none of this coaching is going to do any good if you're not here with me. So if you miss a day, get right back on it. Don't beat yourself up. Just rejoin me, and let's rock and roll together. And tomorrow, by the way, tomorrow's first session is not about philosophy and inspiration. Tomorrow is that first introductory day of the Hour of Power. Think of it as our first real session, and it's on mechanics. It's on strategy. Tomorrow, I'm going to share with you exactly what I did to change my life years ago, and I still use it to this day, and I've taught millions of people to do it. I'm going to show you exactly what Pat Riley did to come up with that strategy that changed his life and changed the entire team. I'll tell you precisely what he did. He's my dear friend. He can verify it for you. It's these simple, physical, emotional, and focused steps. So that's what tomorrow's session's about. So, hey, I hope this has inspired you. I hope this maybe at times has triggered you to think. I know my style and approach in this session has been really fast and strong and passionate. I know I'm a special bus, but you probably figured out there's no script here, baby. This is just me showing up saying, okay, if you were my dearest friend and I'm taking everything I've learned to help you move to the next level, even if you're better than I am, this is what I know. Here's what we do in our first session. And that's what I really wanted to create here for you. So thank you. It is a privilege and a blessing to be able to start this relationship with you and to start working on coaching and taking things to the next level. Now, by the way, we've covered so much territory. And, honestly, my ideal would not be just to be having an audio conversation with you. I create these programs so we can reach millions of people because it's so darn easy and convenient. I mean, you don't have to go anyplace or do anything. It's, at your fingertips. You could do it 24/7, 365, anytime you want, using that net time, no extra time. But if you ask me, Tony, okay, I really want to take things to the next level. I want to transform things at a higher level right now, my body or my emotions, my finances, relationships, whatever. And you said, what's the best way to do it? The answer is total immersion. Just remember, I've created these events where literally in a couple days, in a weekend, you're able to go from where you are to where you want to be because we cover everything and we do it while you're in state. And you have the power of being in that group dynamic and me being able to individually work with you and other people right there in front of you. So immersion events are my favorite thing. They'll get you the fastest result. The follow-up to that ideally is one-on-one coaching. Again, convenient. You can do it anytime you want from wherever you are in the world because it's all done by phone and it's on your schedule. And it's brief and it's easy, and we're talking 20, 30, 45 minutes, an hour max, depending upon what you want to need, once, twice, 3 times a month, again, depending upon your needs. And then finally, the reinforcement of repetition. Coming back to this audio program and focusing on an area that matters to you, going through it again, locking it in your body, making sure that that repetition gets it in your body and you follow through. Total immersion, one-on-one coaching, and an audio program for that constant reinforcement. So if you're interested, call us at 1-800-898-8669. That's 1-800-898-8669, which, by the way, 8669 is Tony. Tony, corny as it sounds, but it's easy to remember. 1-800-898-8669, 898-TONY. Or just go to TonyRobbins.com. That'll get you the ultimate result that you're really after. I hope you'll take advantage of it, and I'll have the chance to meet you at some live event soon. Maybe you'll be able to share with me some of the results you've already gotten in your life as we go to the next level together. Thanks again for your time. This has been a privilege to serve you. I'll look forward to our next session together. God bless and live with passion. Hi, this is Tony Robbins. Welcome back to The Ultimate Edge. Listen, I'm so excited to share with you what we're going to work on today because today's information fundamentally changed my entire life decades ago, and I still use it every day of my life to take my life to the next level. When I'm working with anybody, I don't care if it's the president of a company or a young person, a pro athlete, a mom or a dad, fundamentally I've got to do 2 things. We got to change their head, what they're thinking about, what they're focused on, kind of the mental, emotional state they're in. And we've also got to give them the strategies so they can get the results they want faster, so they can compress time, so they can get decades compressed into days of progress. To do that, you need both philosophy, the stuff that helps you look at the world differently, give you a different perspective, but you also need strategy, the very specific how-tos to go from one place to the next, to close the gap between where you are and where you really want to be. To get those strategies so they're implemented consistently, though, you need what we're going to do today, which is a simple system for conditioning yourself to follow through, conditioning yourself to be at your best. Now, let me say this first. Before we go anywhere else in this program, I don't know how you started this program. I'm hoping this is your second session. But if you haven't heard Decisions in Destiny, those 2 little audios, that's our real start. In fact, if you open your program, I think it says very important, begin here. That's where I'd like you to start. Like, turn me off and come back here, because in those first 2 sessions, in that Decision and Destiny section, you're going to learn really what controls your life, the overview, what we call the 3 pillars. And if you listened to it already, you know what I'm talking about here. It really helps you understand the blueprint that controls how you feel, what makes you happy, what makes you angry, what makes you frustrated, what makes you successful. So I want to make sure you do that first if you haven't done it already. And if you did do it, you remember the first piece of homework at the end of that session was to say, okay, we've gone through all this. Let's start with the end in mind. Let's start with, what do you really want today? Because the only way we're going to make progress in this session or any other session in your life is we've got to get clear about what it is you want. Your life is not about being like me or anyone else. Your life is about being what you want it to be. So we start out with a simple question at the end of that session. And that is really, what would an extraordinary quality of life look like for you today? What would life look like if it was on your terms? If you didn't have any limits, if you were living life the way you wanted to be, how would you live your life? What would it be like physically? How would you start your day? How would you spend your time? What would your body be like energetically, physically, structure, the way you look if you were absolutely where you want to be? What would your relationships be like? What would your finances be like? What would you feel like emotionally? What would be the level of passion or aliveness? And you don't have to have this perfect, but you want to have an idea of what you're after, because part of what we're going to do today, and even if you listened to that before, it's good to bring that up again, is get you so that you consistently focus on what you want instead of what you don't want. If you talk to the average person, you say, what do you want? They go, I don't know. Or maybe they'll say something like, I'll tell you what I want. I don't want to live this way anymore. You got to remember something. You'll hear me say this again and again, because repetition's the mother of skill, and you want to get this into your system. And that's simply this: wherever focus goes, energy flows. And so most of us are so focused on what we don't want, that's all we experience. So I know it's fundamental. This is common sense, but again, you notice how common sense is not too common. A lot of us know what we should be doing, but we just don't do it. So I'm going to give you some tools here today that are going to really set you up to win. And I want to tell you something else. We call this the hour of power. But I want to tell you, we're living in interesting times, and human beings today, they expect results instantly with no effort and without giving something any focus. And even the ones that are dedicated, that say, hey, this is going to take effort, energy, will, they start to get things going, and they have such demands on themselves already that they feel exhausted thinking about taking on another hour of power. So let me just tell you right now, reframe this hour of power. This has got to be super easy and fun. For some of you, this is really going to be, 30 minutes to thrive or 15 minutes to be fulfilled. This system I'm going to share with you here, it's designed to be a trigger to get you in the state of mind, emotion, spirit, soul, and body, where all of you is unified and you're ready to rock and roll, where you can face the challenge of your day and rip them open, where you can take on the opportunities and maximize them. So I want you to know, whenever I talk about this hour of power, I'm a realist. Today, most people won't give things an hour every day, and I find it difficult even to give an hour to anything myself every day. So I don't want this to be a limit for you. Start out with 15 minutes, and don't feel bad if you don't do an hour or 30 minutes. Give yourself the gift of just a little momentum, because if you do those 15 minutes, I'm telling you, you're going to get more success than you've ever felt before in your life, your mind, your emotions, and your progress. If you even did 5 minutes of what I'm going to talk to you about today, you're going to find you're going to get a new momentum. You're going to find yourself shifting the way you think and the way you feel. And what we're really going to do in this session is get you to tap into what you're grateful for. Because when you're grateful, there is no fear. When you're grateful, you can't be angry simultaneously. It changes your world. Then we're going to get you focused on what it is you want. Then we're going to get you in the state where you know you can make it happen, that state of absolute certainty that every great athlete, every great leader taps into, and you tap into when you're at your best. So that's what today's about. So bear that in mind as you go through this session. What are we going to do in this session? Well, we're going to do 3 things. First, I want to get you oriented and refocused on what's going to create an extraordinary life on your terms, not somebody else's. What is it you want? Where's the gap between where you are and where you really want to be? And how do you close that? And then secondly, what we're going to do in this session is really going to begin to establish a way to measure where you live. Now, when I say where you live, I'm talking about where you live emotionally. Right? No matter what your life is like, no matter how great it is or how difficult it is, the quality of your life is not what's happening to you. The quality of your life is, where do you live emotionally? Some people live in anger. You know what it's like. Some people live in a place of playfulness. And it doesn't matter what happens, they always seem to have a good time. These emotional habits are your home. We're going to have you begin to measure where you live regularly and be really specific about it. We're going to kind of give you what I call a checkup from the neck up. Something that can help you get perspective, because you can only manage something if you can measure it. If you don't measure it, there's no management. There's no way to shift it. There's no way to lead yourself to another level. And then the third part of this little audio of today is really going to be about a specific strategy to shift the results you get in your life every day. And if you look at it, it's really not just about getting inspired and pumped up. It's about having a ritual to put yourself in the state where your greatest strengths are, and to really align your mind, your body, your language, your emotions, your feelings, so that you're in that place where you're going to perform at your best and you're going to enjoy your life to the maximum. If you look at somebody like Tiger Woods or an Olympian like, Michael Phelps, people that do the extraordinary, at any time in their life when they were at their best, and they've all gotten off track at times, but when they're at their best, they have rituals. They're not lucky. Things don't just happen. They've got a way to kind of trigger at those key moments the state of mind and emotion and performance, the results that they really want. We're going to take you through that process. And again, it's how I changed my life originally. It's the process that, as I described to you in the last session, Pat Riley used within himself to create the triggers and changes that allowed him to lead his team to his 5th NBA championship ring as a leader. So that's where we're going. Now, let's start this session. And to start this session, I'll tell you what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about what's missing. Yeah, missing. What's missing from your life? You might say, wait a second, nothing's missing from my life, Tony. I'm on a roll. I'm here with you in the ultimate edge. I mean, my life is great. I'm just here because I like to improve a few things. Okay, I believe you. But if you're really honest, I bet there's something missing. See, the goal of this session, of this hour of power, is to get you not just to realize how extraordinary your life is and appreciate what you have, but also to decide on what you want and to make it happen by making the shifts inside yourself that are necessary. But to make that happen, you're going to have to recapture what's missing. Not only what you want and what you need, but if there's one thing missing from most people's life today because of the way we live and technology, it's time. I mean, think about it. Not just time, but time for yourself. Time to actually feel. Time to not just react to the constant stimulus. Time to sit down and dream or decide, this is how I want my life to be. This is what I'm committed to. This is how I'm going to live from this day forward. See, most of us are so caught up in making a living and reacting to your iPhone or another set of emails or someone who's interrupting you in the middle of a conversation to take an email, on their phone, or the buzzing in your pocket, or the stimulus of 1,000 channels. All of this set of triggers, all our normal business demands we have from our families. We want to take care of our families. We want to make a difference in the world and be the strongest we could possibly be. We want to achieve and succeed and be happy. And oh yeah, by the way, we got to deal with terrorism, economies that go up and down. And wow, what happened to that stock market? What happened to that real estate market? Or, what's happening in my business? There's all the normal stresses of the environment. And then there's how we've begun to live. And I'm here to say to you that if you will give yourself one gift, if you give yourself the gift a little bit of time to think, to feel, to be, to condition your body and mind to work together, the whole game can change. But if you don't, you can succeed like crazy, you can make it all happen, and you can still feel empty. Have you been there? Where you made everybody else feel good, and you were a super dad or mom or business person, and, it's all there, but you still got stress? And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you're not going to have stress in your life, but I'm saying there needs to be some time for you. Do you agree with me on this? So if you do that, you can make this psychological shift that changes life, the mental shift, the emotional shift, and the physical shift. Because after all, what are we talking about here when we talk about an extraordinary life? Let's remind you, what creates an extraordinary life no matter what's happening in our life? It's this psychology. And by the way, are you experiencing extraordinary life? Are we living in a world of extraordinary life? Extraordinary resources, yes. But depending on where you live in the world, if you live in the Western world or, quote, the modern world, what you see mostly is stress. So part of my goal here with you in the Ultimate Edge, and even in the beginning of this session, is to set up a new game for you that you designed, that you can win, and that you can condition into your system so that when things get crazy, bam, you can go there. And it doesn't require you to go to some external stimulus to feel that aliveness, or to feel fulfilled, or to feel at peace, or to feel your center. I mean, when do we really stop and feel? I mean, really feel, remember who we are and what we're about and what we want from our lives. Most of us never find that time. And so what happens to most of us is, since we're constantly in the action of doing, the old phrase, we're not human doings, we're human beings, it's kind of corny, but it's true. We don't take the time to be. And so what occurs is, out of the stress of doing, constantly competing, trying to make sure we achieve, we contribute, and take care of the family, and we make everything happen, most of us, to survive, look for a way to stop and distract ourselves. And so we drug ourselves. And the drug isn't always regular drugs. We don't call it drugs, we call it food. Because you eat enough of that stuff and load up, guess what happens? All of a sudden you relax, especially if you overeat, all that blood rushes into your stomach, and you start to breathe again. Do you ever notice when you're going, go, 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 go like this, you're not breathing very much? That creates just a bit of stress. And some people, that's not enough. They get CNN and then they're working on the internet simultaneously, and they're getting a conversation on the other side because they figure if they can keep enough things going in their head, they can forget about all the stuff that's stressing them. They don't even care about what's on the television. They don't really care about what they're surfing on the net. They just need an escape. But you'll never escape your way to fulfillment. You'll never escape your way to joy. You'll never escape your way to an extraordinary life. The only way you get that is by deciding what that means to you. What is that extraordinary life? What is that fulfillment? What is it you want? And that's got to be a process that is consistent, not something you do once in a while when you got a birthday with a 0 on the end. Not something that you do, at New Year's, where you sit down and go, all right, I better look at my life, see how I'm doing. All right, let's make some resolutions that I know I'm going to break within the week, and then I'll check in on them maybe a year from now, next New Year's, and see how I'm doing. That's called recipe for failure. Do you think most people in life are fulfilled? Or are most people in life stressed? Now, let me tell you, stress is a code word for fear. See, when somebody says they're stressed, that's because they don't want to say I'm fearful. You go, no, I'm just stressed. I have all these things to do. Well, why are you stressed about it? Well, if I don't get them done, if you don't get them done, what? Well, then everybody will be upset. Well, what if they are a little upset? Well, well, then I'll have failed. Well, if you fail, what does that mean? Well, you keep on digging. If they fail, they feel like if they failed, then they're worthless. If they're worthless, they won't be loved. Stress comes from making things more important than they really are. And most people in life are spending all their time majoring in minor things. They're putting all their focus, all their energy, all their attention on responding to the reactions of the moment, rather than stopping in that timeless place of who you are and saying, gosh, what is it that I really want today? What do I want to create? Because I got to tell you something. Everything in the outside world, everything around you that you like or dislike, that's stressing you or that you're thrilled about, was first created on the inside. Everything that you're experiencing in your life, your relationship, the way your kids are, your job, your opportunities, it all started with decisions you made in your head. Decisions about what to focus on, decisions about what things were meaning, whether you should be upset about it, or whether you should learn from it, whether this is a challenge, an opportunity, or a crisis. And the decision about what you're going to do, these decisions are shaping your life. You got to understand, getting the edge simply means this. 80% of success in anything in life is psychology. The ability to manage your mindset, your ability to find the opportunity in any situation. If you're going to have an extraordinary quality of life, if you're going to get the edge in life, where the passion and the juice and the joy and the fulfillment and the happiness and the love and the family is, where you got it all, you got the love, the respect, the connection, the contribution, the money, the fun, the fame, the whatever your definition of the ultimate level of life, that edge comes when you master your mind and your emotions. But you know what? 20% of your success is mechanics, and they do play a role. And sometimes our mechanics are getting in the way of our psychology. Sometimes we've structured our life where there's no time to think or be. So you say, okay, if you ranted and raved, what am I supposed to do? All right, you start to kind of say, I should take some time for myself. Where am I going to find that? I got to get up. I got to take the kids to school. I got to make it to work. I get it all done. I come back home. I got to pick them up. I got to take them to dance lessons, to soccer. Well, then I got to work on my homework. Then I got to answer all my emails. When am I going to do this stuff? Stop. We all get what we have to have. That's it. The most basic principle getting the edge is for you to understand and for me to remember, for all of us to remember, we all get our musts, we don't get our shoulds. Everybody's got a list of shoulds. I should take time to work out. I should take time for myself. I should actually go on a diet. I should make more calls. I should just allow myself to listen to some music and meditate a little bit. I should do my taxes. But most people doing this stuff, they just what I call should all over themselves. You don't want to should all over yourself. Here's what's true. What you must do, what you believe is a must, happens. Right now, you're earning what you must earn and not a dime more. Not what you want to, don't get me wrong. And listen, I know I sound like I'm ranting. That's because I'm a nut. But by being a nut, I've achieved a lot. I've achieved a lot of things in my dreams and goals that have happened because what I am is I'm unreasonable in my expectations. So if I sound unreasonable, it's not to be disrespectful and it's not just a rant. It's because I know I've spent the last 30 years of my life now with more than 3 million people from every walk of life, from presidents of countries to presidents of companies to parents to children, best sports people in the world. I've had the chance to find the difference in people, and the difference is in their unreasonable psychology. That unreasonableness has gotten them to say, this is a must and I will settle for nothing less. And those individuals, whether it's a woman like Rosa Parks on a bus who says, no, I will not move to the back of the bus. That was completely unreasonable. She had no way to back it up and she changed the world. Or a little lady, tiny woman with no background, no education, no money, who decides she's going to change the world, Mother Teresa. Person who, by the power of her will, her psychology, her unreasonableness, by making it a must to help people that no one would help, by making that her must, she changed the world. When she died, every major leader in the world flew. 100,000 people lined the streets to watch a woman who supposedly had no resources. Unreasonable men and women shape the world. If you want to get the edge, you got to get unreasonable. The way you get unreasonable is you turn your shoulds into musts. And I'm here to tell you, you're earning what you must earn. You have the time you must have. If you say to me, I really want a relationship, but I'm not in one, then your relationship's a should and not a must. What's really a must is you don't want to be hurt. It's a must not to be hurt. And if it's a must not to be hurt, you're not going to be in a relationship. Because if you're going to be in a relationship, there's going to be hurts. That's part of the nature of a relationship. But there's going to be more joy than you could ever imagine, too. Right? The advantage. You want to get the edge? Get over your fear and tell yourself the truth. We got to take a specific time each day where you break away from the hypnosis of the culture that tells you to settle for less than you can be, that tells you not to get your hopes up, that tells you you should protect yourself, that tells you that basically your life cannot be what you dreamed about as a child. And I'm here to tell you that as long as you buy into the culture, you'll be like the majority of the population who have no advantage and have to settle for a life that really is what I call no man's land. A life where they're not really happy, but they're not unhappy enough to do anything about it. A life where there is no passion and no real drive. Just that sinking feeling that your life does not have a real meaning or a real purpose, but you got to continue. That's a place no one wants to live, and that's unfortunately where the majority of people live. Do you agree with me on this or disagree? If you disagree, I'm respectful of that. But if you want more, and if you believe that that's possible, and you're the kind of person that won't settle, then this is the first session in you reclaiming your power. It's the first session in you putting your foot down and saying, I will not be denied. It's the first session in you saying, my body, my mind, my emotions, my relationships, my finances, my career, they're not going to be perfect, but they're going to be extraordinary. And it won't be overnight, but what will change overnight is my expectations of myself. Not my expectations will suddenly be perfect without any work. This is not a little cajoling session to say, I'm going to pump myself up. I'm going to be Stuart Smalley and say, I'm good enough, I'm strong enough, I'm kind enough, and by golly, people like me. No! Some people don't like you. Some people are going to fight to try and keep you from achieving. Some people are going to tell you you're wasting your time. And some people are going to try and trip you up are people that you love. And it's not because they don't love you or they're trying to hurt you. It's they don't want to be left behind. Or they don't want, your success to make them feel inferior, like you're achieving, or even if you're not succeeding, even if you're striving, and they're not, there's contrast in that. That's part of life. You don't have to think anything else is to be dumb, and you're not dumb, or you would have turned this off a long time ago. So give this thing to somebody I don't like. This guy's crazy. I am a little crazy, but you gotta be a little crazy. You gotta be a little different. You gotta be a little weird in your expectations of the rest of society, because if you agree with everybody else, you're in trouble. Somebody told me a long time ago, find out where the masses are going, go the opposite direction, your chances are better. You don't want to be part of the hypnosis of a culture that settles. Not if you want the advantage in life, not if you want the edge. And again, the edge is living life on your terms. It doesn't mean the edge over something or someone else. It means living at the level of life where life is fully worth living, where that meaning is there. So how do we do this? What do we need to do today to start this process? Well, the first thing we've got to do is understand what creates that extraordinary life. And we've already identified it. An extraordinary life does not come from more money, because lots of people have lots of money and they're still miserable. They're unhappy. They're unhealthy. Their relationships are weak. And there are people who have no money whatsoever who are totally happy and fulfilled. It's not coming from having a great relationship. That doesn't give you extraordinary quality of life. How many people have an incredible person who loves them totally, but they don't feel loved? Or they feel loved by them, but they still feel like their life is meaningless or worthless because they haven't achieved enough. They haven't done enough. Their body's not strong enough. Their kids haven't accomplished enough. See, it's not going to come from money. It's not going to come from relationship. It's not going to come from your job. It's not going to come from getting a raise. It's not going to come from anything but you finally stopping and understanding that the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the quality of the emotions you're in on a daily basis. If you live in frustration, if you live in resentment, if you live in anger, if you live in rejection, if you live in self-pity, if you live in those emotional states, the quality of your life, no matter what happens, no matter how much money you get, no matter how many people think they love you, no matter how much you achieve, will be worthless. If you live in a space of gratitude, if you cultivate the emotion of passion, if you cultivate the emotion of excitement, of love, of compassion, of drive, of hunger, of ambition, of appreciation, of grace, of humility. In those states, it won't matter what happens in your job. It won't matter what challenges come, because they're going to come. It's only a matter of time. You'll have another one soon. We all got problems. Problems are a sign of life. And the way we deal with them determines the quality of our life. And the way we deal with them is, where do you spend your time emotionally? Where are you? That idea of an extraordinary life only comes from an extraordinary psychology, which is a mindset that allows you to find an empowering meaning in whatever life gives you. I meet people all the time that are so upset over the littlest things. And you meet somebody who's terminally ill and you don't even know it. You don't even know it. You find out later on from somebody else. They're so happy. They're so excited. And you talk to them and say, how do you do this? And they say, listen, to me, it's not how long I live. It's how I live. I'm here to live fully while I'm here, while I'm alive. I'm going to get upset about little stuff like that. I have a friend that was shot down in Vietnam, was locked up for 7 years. His name is Captain Jerry Coffey. And Captain Coffey and I have been friends for several decades now, but I'll tell you, the greatest thing he did that allowed him to make this one of the best experiences of his life, which is ridiculous as that sounds, he really experiences and believes, is because he developed a set of rituals while he was in that prison that allowed him to take control of his body, his mind, his emotions, and to this day, they live inside him. One of the most valuable things of this session, the reason we call it this hour of power, and the shortcut to it, by the way, is called 30 minutes to thrive, or at least 15 minutes to be fulfilled. Everybody's got 15 minutes, is a set of rituals of what you're going to do with your body, your vision or focus, your emotion, your language, that will gear you up to be able to handle anything. Where literally, whatever happens, you'll be able to say the same thing about that aspect of your life as Jerry Coffey said about those 7 years. See, in any moment in time, you can be upset about anything. Because what's wrong is always available. I mean, if there's nothing wrong with you, if you got kids, there's something wrong there. I promise you, just look. Or there's something wrong with your spouse. There's something wrong with your boss. Or there's something wrong with the world. There's something wrong in Africa. There's something wrong somewhere. What's wrong is always available, and so is what's right. If you don't consciously decide what you're going to focus on every day and make it a priority, then weeds grow automatically. You don't have to plant weeds. They're automatic. You don't have to worry about gravity. Something's going to pull you down unless you use your will to stand up and move. You go, well, it's just natural to be down all the time. Well, then it's natural to lie on the ground, right? But how we have an extraordinary life is we resist the natural forces. I remember years ago when I met Norman Vincent Peale. He was amazing. He was 92 years old. He was doing a seminar. And I was 32 at the time. And I thought, gosh, only 60 more years of this. And so I said to him, I said, Norman, what are you doing still going out here doing seminars at 92 years old? And he was so cute. He turned to me and he said, Tony, there's still a few negative people out there. I started laughing. I said, you're the best. And I said, tell me, what's the most important thing you want people to understand when you're talking? He said, that problems are a sign of life. He's the person I got that from. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, everybody's talking about how they don't want any problems. He said, but the only people that have problems are people that live in cemeteries. And I said, I heard that somewhere. He said, well, yeah, I said that in 1936. I said, my God, he's been around a while. But the reason I tell the story about him is the idea of resistance. He said to me, when he first met Gene Tunney, who was the heavyweight boxing champion of the world back then, he said, I went up to Gene and I said, Gene, how do you get muscles like that? And Gene looked at me and said, do you really want to know or are you just asking? And Norman said, actually, I was just asking. But he said, I didn't say that to him. I said, yeah, I want to know. And he said, Gene looked at me. He got really intense. Put this grimace on his face. He made his bicep really huge and showed me the size. And he said, you know how I get this? Every day, I push against enormous amounts of resistance. And my pushing against that resistance sculpts these muscles. They expand by demand. I thought, wow, expand by demand. That's pretty cool. And Norman looked at me and he said, I thought about that for a long time. He said, you know what I realized? He said, I realized that God gives us problems because problems are the resistance that we have to push against to sculpt our character, to sculpt our souls. And he said, if we didn't have any problems, we don't have a life. And I thought, he's right. The only thing I want is a better quality of problem. In the beginning, I had the problems like, oh, how do I eat? How do I take care of myself? Then in my business, how do I get someone to show up? Then it was like, oh my God, we can't get a big enough stadium. These are quality problems. I have to remind my team of that. But the reason I tell you that is whether it's a problem or whether it's an opportunity, it comes down to focus. If you're in a lousy state, everything's a problem. When you're feeling strong, when you're in that place, when you feel alive, then all of a sudden what used to be a problem is like, we can handle it. But if you don't do something every day to get yourself in that state first, and you first get hit with stuff, I promise you, you're not going to deal with it the same way. So let's get right to the point here. If you're going to have an extraordinary life, that life where you are juiced, then all that means is you're going to have a life where the primary emotions of your life are the ones you want. See, it doesn't mean that life works out every way you want. Sometimes it rains on your parade. Sometimes the events of your life you can't control, but you can control what it means to you. And when you control what it means to you, you have the ultimate power of your life. You have the edge, the ultimate advantage. See, I'll give you an example. Did you see that movie, Life is Beautiful? It's a story of a man who has an extraordinary life. Not because he has more money than anybody else, not because he's in a situation where everything is easy, but because he's alive. He has this joy about him. And by the way, if you've actually ever met Roberto Benigni, the man who plays this character, you know that he lives this way day to day. He was authoring this thing from himself. He's such a joyous guy. And when he won the Academy Award, you never saw so much emotion. He was like a little boy, and everybody loved it because nobody else has the guts to be that way. or they've forgotten what it feels like to just feel, to be alive. What makes him extraordinary? An extraordinary psychology, an extraordinary mindset, an extraordinary way of looking at the world. And in the movie, the man has that, doesn't he? And who does it affect? Everyone. Everyone within the realm of his influence. His wife feels like the most cherished person on earth, and so does he. Because when you give that kind of love and that kind of joy, people give it back. It's infectious. His son seems so happy, and they're in the middle of the Nazis taking over their country, and if you know the story, I won't run it, you know that they get picked up. And there's such a connection amongst the family that the wife is not being sent away, and she gets on the train with them. And they're in the middle of this camp. This man with his extraordinary psychology figures a way of looking at the situation for his son, presenting it so that his son sees it as a game. Isn't life a game anyway? Instead of this horrible situation. And because he has that perspective, in the end, his family survives. See, if you want your family to survive, if you want them to succeed, if you want them to have joy, if you want your kids to have a lasting love, if you want to be able to give gifts in your life and not just take care of yourself, then you got to have an extraordinary psychology within yourself. It's not where you live physically, it's where you live internally. There are two worlds, the inside world and the outside world. We can't totally control the outside one, but we have absolute control in the inside one. But you know what? Most of us are too busy to take any time to check out and see how it's going on in here. Or we just accept it as this is the status quo. This is who I am. This is my life. Or I'll get to it later. Mañana. I got to handle this first. Something else that's not so important. I mean, if we're going to have a life, we got to have time. And the time has to have some specific things we do. And one of those is gratitude. If you want to know what's the quality of your life, how much time do you spend in gratitude? How much time are you grateful and appreciative to the point that emotion wells up in you? I'm feeling it now. I'm so grateful to God. I'm so grateful to have the privilege to serve you right now. So if you can get to that state, everything changes. I'll give you an example. If you think about being fearful, when you're fearful, you're not grateful. And everybody's got fears. Fear they're not enough, fear that it won't work out, fear they won't be loved. Everybody's got that at some level unconsciously. We're human. So you can put the fear aside when you're grateful. I don't just mean intellectually, yeah, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for that. I mean stopping, thinking, seeing, and feeling. So I'm going to walk you through a system that includes gratitude. Every day of our life, we got to have a vision. Every day of our life, we got to have something that excites us. When people tell me, oh, I'm bored, I'm tired, that thing is boring. No, you're boring. Because you don't have something that excites you in your life. You haven't come up with a vision. You haven't come something to move towards. We all need something that's going to make us use more of who we are. Our courage, our passion, our joy. Face our fears. Build our emotional muscles. But you don't build emotional muscles when you do the same thing day after day after day. What you get is a life that's unfulfilling. So we've got to have a vision. So every day I'm going to take you through a simple process that'll get you to expand your vision. So you have a compelling future. That thing that makes you want to get up early. There's a reason. You got to have a reason. And, I have friends that have sold their companies. One guy sold his company and made almost $1 billion in cash, about 800 million plus. And, he was so excited for about 2 months, maybe 3. But you know what? After that, there's only so much time you want to sit on the beach by yourself because everybody else is working, and doing something and being productive. There's only so many cocktails you can take. There's only so many, movies you can watch. There's a limit to it. What he needed was a new vision. Anytime you achieve a goal, as you get close to it, you better set up the next one real quick, because otherwise it's kind of like postpartum. You were looking forward to that baby, and now you got him. And sometimes in the middle of the night, you're going, what did I do here? Have you ever had that experience? I got 4 kids. I can relate. I hope you can. But you know what? You also have the experience on the other side of it. It's so wonderful. It's kind of like you got to have a vision for what your life's about now. Without a vision, people perish. And you got to have a daily vision that'll excite you. Otherwise, life becomes mundane, and there's nothing worse than an okay life. I told you, you're not going to have that when we're done here. I promise you, if you get this little habit, you won't have to settle for a mundane life. What people are going to go is, what happened to you? Because there's an excitement in creation. There's not a lot of excitement in maintenance. I mean, you have to maintain your body. You got to maintain things, but creating things, that's what God created us for. Gave us the gift to make choices that could create new things, businesses, ideas, families, friends, a garden. And it's available to every one of us. But if you don't got a vision each day, then the day is not going to have much juice, is it? So every day there's got to be a little time for vision. right? Time for gratitude, time for vision. Every day you got to move. I'll tell you why most people are unhappy. They don't move. Look at our lives today. I mean, most people live in a box, don't they? And then what do? They get up in the morning, have a box cereal breakfast, right? And then they get in their box and they drive. And sure enough, they drive to their box office. They go up a box elevator. They type on a box. They talk on a box. They have a box lunch. They drive their box home. They turn on a box to be entertained. And maybe they just really go for the variety and have a cylinder to try and change their state. Listen, life has got to be about movement. When you move, you're alive. Emotion comes from motion. The more you move, the more you feel. Motion in your voice. For me to have this voice change, I'm changing the way I move. You saw me right now, you think I'm a maniac because I'm moving different ways, but that's how you feel. And by the way, the less you move, the less you feel, the less alive you are. If you're totally rigid, totally inflexible, no movement, this is known as death, right? So if you have emotionally, you're stuck, move. So every day you got to move. Now, that can be a simple, gentle form of exercise, but it's something that's got to happen. And by the way, if you want a great relationship with anybody, what do you got to have? Some time with them, don't you? How about you? How about you? And not only do you have to have time with them, but maybe have a conversation with them. And most of us got conversations in our head, but we're not directing them. So we're going to show you each day how to have a conversation that you direct. A way of directing your mind, of shaping your mind, of conditioning your mind. It's kind of like going to the gym and just getting in the best shape of your life, but it's the best mental, emotional, spiritual, physical shape. And you don't need me to do it. I don't have to follow you around the rest of your life. This is going to be something you're going to do for yourself. And remember, if you don't do this every day, it's okay. I don't do it every day either. But I'll tell you what I did. I did it for years. I did it for months in a row. The way I shifted myself is I realized I can't do this once in a while. I got to drive it in my body. And I did. The physical change, the focus, the language, until I literally felt it, breathed it, experienced it. I mean, I literally drilled and programmed my mind that I would follow through, where I would expect the best, where I would take action without hesitancy. If you're not yet getting the result, come back to this process. If you miss a day, just do it the next day. But I will tell you this, if you do this for the next 30 days, 21 minimum, couple of weeks, absolute minimum, I'm talking at least 15 minutes, you're going to get momentum. You're going to get addicted to this. You're not going to be doing like it's a chore. You're going to look forward to this time with yourself. You're going to come out so vital and strong for your day, or at the end of the day to get ready for the next one. You're going to love it. And I will tell you, I've talked to people who've done this for years and then they stopped for a while and then something else showed up in their life and they know exactly where to go to get back on target. They come back to this hour of power. And remember, you don't have to do the full hour. Just do 15 minutes to be fulfilled. Do 7, 8, or 9 minutes where you move your body. You get focused on what you're grateful about. You focus on what you really want. You do some incantations and you'll be rocking and rolling. And if you do that, you'll get momentum. Pretty soon you go, oh, let me do at least 15 minutes. Oh, man, this is feeling good. Let me go for a half hour. Don't you deserve at least 30 minutes out of your day? Out of 24 hours? An hour out of 24 hours to have the power and the juice and the excitement and the strength be activated in you? Listen, all this stuff's in you. But if we don't focus, if we don't activate it, we're not going to have the power and fulfillment we deserve. So, how does it work? Well, let's do this first. It's time for you to make some discoveries. So I'm going to ask you, just take a moment. And if you have our journal there, you can do it in a journal. You can do it on a piece of paper. You don't make it rules-driven. Just do it. Don't just do it in your head. I want you to write down all the emotions you experience in an average week. And on one side, write all the good ones. The other side, all the bad ones. Now, when I say bad ones, there really are no bad emotions, but the ones that are painful and you don't like. So all I want you to do is write them down. And when you write them down, try not to edit them. Don't try and say, well, just do it this way. If you experience this emotion on a consistent basis, doesn't mean every day, but at least once a week, write it down. The ones you consistently feel, not the one once in a while you feel this feeling, because what this is going to tell us is where you're really living right now. This doesn't tell me your income. I don't care. But I care about what you're passionate about. I care about what hurts you. I care about what you love. I care about what moves you. And you do too. And you don't even have to tell me the what's. Let's just figure out the feelings first. So please take a moment right now, because now we're going to begin to stop talking and we're going to start the process of doing. First step here is let's figure out where you are. Write down now, on one side, all the emotions you consistently feel in a week that are positive. On the other side, all negative. So stop and get yourself to this right now. Go ahead. Are you still listening? I'm not going to continue until you do this. Come on here. You got to get there right. Don't just listen. Okay, if you're in your car and you say you can't do it, then do it in your head at least. Or pull the car over. You're worth figuring out where you are. Cars are going to go by. You're going to drive the rest of your life. You're still going to get there. It'll take 3 minutes. Come on, be one of the few to do. Pull over. That's it. Pull over right now. Sit down and write this out just for a second. I promise you it'll be worth it. Go ahead and do it. Do it right now. So now you have some emotions that you really want. How do you create them? And you have some emotions you don't want. How do you get rid of them? Well, what if I told you literally could change how you feel in an instant? Well, you know this is true from your past experience at times, right? There are times where you're totally upset and then something got your attention and now you're laughing. You know, people can be literally at a funeral and they're in a terrible place and all of a sudden something cracks them up. I mean, it's pretty rare, but it has happened. People can be in a place where they're in the worst situation and somehow they find all their determination. How to do that specifically is what I want to show you real quickly now. And I'm going to give you a quick overview of it, but I'll give it to you in 3 parts. 3 things you need to feel anything. These are the reasons why you feel anything. In other words, if you feel sad or upset or frustrated or depressed, there's only 3 reasons. And if you change any one of these 3, you're going to change how you feel. And if you change all 3, you'll change how you feel completely. If you're feeling happy, if you're feeling excited, if you're feeling euphoric, if you're on a roll and you want to know why you feel that way, yeah, maybe great things are happening in your life, but there's a reason why you feel that way in this moment. Sometimes you have great things happening in your life and you still don't feel great. So how do you do that? There's 3 reasons. 3 things have to be in place for you to feel great. I call these 3 reasons the triad because there are 3 patterns that if you do these 3 patterns in your body in a certain way, you'll get a certain result, and it's like a recipe. You do one recipe, you get one result. You do another one, you get a different result. You get one kind of cake or another. So let's give you an example. I have an initial seminar, an immersion, where in one weekend, people get massive momentum to change their life. It's called Unleash the Power Within. It's a chance in a weekend to really step up and say, I'm going to transform it. I don't care if it's my body, my emotions, a fear, my job. It's time to do it. And we put people in an environment for 3 days of total immersion. That is a blast. And people come out transformed. That process, though, very often, one of the first things I'll do is I'll ask people, what do you really want? I'll take people in the audience. We got 1,500, 2,000 people in that type of program usually, and they'll say, oh, well, I want to make, $1 million. I want to make $1 billion. I want to help my kids get through school. I want to have more confidence. I want to lose 57 pounds. I say, okay, great. Why do you want these things? If you lost the 57 pounds, if you made the $1 billion, what are you going to get? And sooner or later they'd say, well, if I change the world, it'll make a difference. And I'll say, yeah, but what will that give you? And eventually say, well, it would make me feel good, like my life had meaning. Or they'll say, if I lost 47 pounds, I'd feel more sexy, or I'd feel more energetic. Or they'd say, if I made this money, I'd feel freedom or power or secure. Whatever it is you want, you only want it because you think it's going to give you a feeling. And the truth of the matter is you can have that feeling right now if you just change these 3 patterns I'm going to tell you about. So the first pattern that determines how you feel is not the event, but what you do with your body in this moment. Right now, you're feeling, whatever you're feeling right now as you're listening to me, is related first to how you're using your body. If you're slumped over, if you've not been using it, if you're tired, you probably feel different than if you're listening to me walking right now as an example. Now, I'll give you a more specific example. If I were to tell you that there was a depressed person behind curtain number 1 over here, and for a $100,000 donation to your favorite charity, if you could describe them physically without seeing them, I bet you could do it, couldn't you? What's their posture like? Say it or think it at least. You can say it. No one's going to hear it. You're probably in the car. You're walking. People talk on phones all the time. They don't know what's going on. Speak to me. Seriously, what's their body like? First, their posture's probably what? Slumped. Where are their eyes? Down. Where's their head? Down. What's their breathing like? Full or shallow? Of course it's shallow. Their facial expression, up and tight or slack? You know it's slack. Now, how come you know all these things without me telling you? Because you've practiced this stuff before, haven't you? We all have if we've ever experienced this. Now, if you do this with your body, I don't care who we are. If you do these things to your body, you're going to feel lousy. You're going to feel depressed. Now, if you change the way you use your body, if you put your shoulders back, if you breathe, if you use your voice in a different way, if you move or gesture in a different tempo, it's hard to feel depressed in that way. In fact, there was a research study that was done early in my career that was done at UC Berkeley. And they did something that sounded insane. Traditionally, if somebody's depressed, if they go to a traditional psychiatric approach, today we live with a philosophy that depression is merely a Prozac deficiency. That we live in this world today that if things aren't working out, let's not resolve what's going on inside you. Let's just drug you. It's called better living through chemistry. So at UC Berkeley, they tried something different. No drugs. Did something you're going to think sounds so stupid. Here's all they did. They came up with a simple approach. They took people that were clinically depressed. This means you achieved high levels of depression. You've got certification now. You are clinically depressed. You are an achiever at the depression level. This means you practice this pattern on a regular basis. And they took them. And by the way, I know I'm sounding obnoxious right now. I'm not trying to make depression sound like these people are terrible, because I felt it in my life a long time ago too, but I don't go there anymore because I know exactly what creates it. And I want to break the pattern of us thinking we're not in control. So please understand where I'm really coming from. But the point is, here's what they did. They had people come for 4 weeks, stand in front of this mirror that has 3 parts to it, and do one silly thing. Grin from ear to ear. And they had to make them smile for no good reason for 20 minutes. Now, when they're doing this, they had a grin so big that they created crow's feet on the side of the eyes. You know that little set of lines you're smiling so big? Now, interesting, they keep their shoulders back while they're doing this and breathe fully. You go, dumb idea. But what happened? Not a single person was able to remain depressed, including a woman who claimed that she was depressed even while she slept, which is one heck of an accomplishment. And you know what's interesting? At the end of these 20 days, many of them had no need for medication anymore, and that's all they changed. Only one part of what we call their triad. Just the physical part. That's how powerful it is. See, if you rise up, if you move up, if you use your body in a totally different way, you're going to feel different. Emotion is created by motion. See, we have 80 muscles in our face. How many of them are you using consciously? Are you doing anything different with your body so you can feel different? Or do you do the same things so you feel the same things? You look at your list you have written down there. That list represents a few patterns that you do in your body on a regular basis, and you don't even think about it. And whenever you do it, you're going to feel it. Some make you feel good when you do that. Some make you feel bad. By the way, when you think about a movement, to breathe, you got to move. To sing, you got to move. To speak. If I start talking like this, I'm moving organs in my body in a different way than if I start speaking more like this. And I said, hi, I'm Tony Robbins, and I'm going to share with you now how to have an extraordinary life during the next 7,000 hours of this program. You got, turn this guy off quick. There's got to be some combination of energy there, and that energy comes because